President Barack Obama prepares to highlight counterterrorism on his upcoming Africa visit. How reliable are the closed-circuit security cameras in Nairobi? And Indonesia becomes a mecca for fashion-forward Muslims. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Lenore Moudou. This is Africa 54. Anticipation is building in East Africa for U.S. President Barack Obama's visit to Kenya and Ethiopia later this week. Mr. Obama's first stop is Kenya, where improving security cooperation and trade links between the two countries will be high on the discussion agenda when President Obama and Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta meet. In addition to being a key Western ally in the battle against the spread of extremist terrorism, Kenya is also a major regional economic hub. Joining us now live from Nairobi with a preview of President Obama's historic visit to Kenya is Africa 54's own Vincent Makori. Hello, Vincent.
Hello, Lenore. Indeed, it's a countdown to the arrival of the U.S. President Barack Obama in Kenya. For many of Kenyans, this is a homecoming of a son of the land. Security is high. At the University of Nairobi, we actually caught up with a professor and a few students who offered their views of the president's visit to Kenya.
We've had a lot of excitement, and I think we needed to have this kind of excitement because Obama has been the talk of the world ever since he took over leadership in the U.S. And he's visited Africa and never stepped into his fatherland. And now that he's found time to come and visit Kenya, the place where his father sprang from before he went to the U.S., there is a lot of excitement because Kenya regard Obama as their son. Well, there are some realistic and perhaps some unrealistic expectations. But I think there are some genuine things that America and Kenya need to partner together on. For example, the war on terror. Somalia is a breeding ground for terrorists. Those terrorists don't just hurt Kenya, but they could, in fact, if they breed enough, terrorize even the West and Western interests in other parts of the world. So terror as an issue and terrorism as a whole is a genuine case where we need a lot of collaboration, and America perhaps is the best experienced in this.
The president's visit to Kenya in particular boosts the confidence of investors in the nation. Then it makes the investors believe that there is something good in this nation. There is confidence in the leadership in the nation, unlike the issues that were raised, choices of consequences.
In the long run, they are good projects, but somehow it's sort of pretense. Why do we do things when the visitor is coming? We should always beautify the city with or without a visitor. So it's like we are wasting a lot of resources.
So, Vincent, it seems that the general sentiment is pretty positive and optimistic in terms of what the president's visit will give or bring to the country.
Indeed, high expectations for many. This is the first time ever a sitting American president is visiting Kenya. So that on itself gives it another meaning, but also being Barack Obama, people see him coming not just as the U.S. president, but also as one of them, as a brother. And therefore, they feel like he will be a little more passionate about some of the issues that are important to them. And therefore, they expect him to kind of address those issues in a kind of a different way than if it were someone else. And so the expectations are there. They're high, but as Professor Nyuto said, some could be unrealistic.
And let's talk about what the government is really looking forward to accomplishing meeting with President Obama. President Kenyatta had on Tuesday a press briefing when he spoke about some of the priorities on the agenda. Tell us more about that.
Yes, President Kenyatta addressed the nation, and he said the priority will be the area of fighting terrorism. Counterterrorism is a basis for a major collaboration between the United States and Kenya, because terrorism has become one of the greatest threats to this country, and Kenya is hoping to benefit from the expertise, the power, the resources of the United States, and therefore they're hoping that they will be having discussions that will help in the fight against terrorism. The president also highlighted that the discussion on business investment will be high on the agenda. They want to talk about areas in which the United States can help build Kenya economically, the investment areas where Kenya can benefit from America's investment, but also hoping to kind of persuade America to open up a little more to them. For instance, the president said they're looking to talk about opening direct links, flights between Kenya and the United States. This is key to the development of this country's economy, especially when you look at the fresh cut flowers, which now have to go the long route, Europe and then the United States. So they're hoping they can at least get to some place which can give hope to Kenyans opening that route, that direct kind of a flight from Kenya to the United States. Those are the priorities. The president of Kenya kind of ignored other areas where people kind of wanted to bring up some other issues, and so focused on those, counterterrorism and investment and business.
Absolutely, and these are very, very important issues. Now let's talk about, you mentioned terrorism.
Yeah.
When we look at the issue of security, which is very, very important, given not only in general, given terrorism, but also the fact that President Obama will be visiting the country, what is being done to beef up security? What have you observed?
Well, you can say that it's nothing like anything that has been seen before. Security has been beefed up everywhere, particularly in Nairobi, but you can say all over the country. And they don't want any incident that will cause embarrassment to the authorities here, but of course they don't want anything that could happen and harm any of the visitors to the country. It's a time also, you know, when the Global Entrepreneurship Conference is happening, and therefore everything is being done to ensure that there's security in the city.
And about the summit, actually, President Obama will be taking part in this summit. Tell us about the significance of this event, and as far as why it's so critical for the president to be there, what it means for the Kenyan people.
Well, it means a lot. First, you have to pay attention to the fact that this is the first time this Global Entrepreneurship Conference is taking place in Kenya or in sub-Saharan Africa. And people are coming from all over the world, entrepreneurs, innovators, government officials, right here in Kenya. So that on its own is very significant, being the first country to host this event in sub-Saharan Africa. But also that President Obama will come here to address these entrepreneurs, young people mostly, is very significant, because they hope to have these young fellows inspired and encouraged to continue, on their path of entrepreneurship and innovation.
Okay.
But also,
Vincent, we have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we'll see more of you this week. Thank you so much for joining us today. And that was Africa 54's Vincent Makori reporting live from Nairobi. Be sure to join Africa 54 on Thursday, when Vincent will have another live report from the Kenyan capital. Now, the U.S. State Department is renewing its warning of possible terrorist attacks in Kenya. And as we've mentioned earlier, counter-terrorism discussions are high on the agenda of President Obama as he prepares to depart for the continent on Thursday. VOA's Arupande has more from the White House.
During his 2013 visit to Senegal, South Africa, and Tanzania, President Obama announced initiatives boosting U.S. cooperation in trade, investment, and infrastructure on the continent. Mr. Obama says his trip to Kenya and Ethiopia is aimed at sending a similar message that the United States is a strong partner, not just for the two nations, but also for sub-Saharan Africa.
Build on the progress that's been made around issues of health and education. Focus on counterterrorism issues that are important in East Africa because of Al-Shabaab and some of the tragedies that have happened inside of Kenya.
The U.S. president's first visit to his ancestral homeland comes amid continued deadly attacks in Kenya by al-Shabaab, and just days after the reopening of Nairobi's Westgate Mall, where militants gunned down 67 people in a 2013 siege. Counterterrorism factors into Mr. Obama's visit to African Union headquarters in neighboring Ethiopia, the first visit to the East African country by a sitting U.S. president. Jeffrey Smith with Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights says the U.S. sees Ethiopia as a key ally in the region, particularly in the fight against al-Shabaab.
Ethiopia is really seen as a bulwark against that, not only in terms of regional cooperation, but contributing troops to AU peacekeeping missions as well across the continent. So in that regard, and particularly their role in the Sudan crisis, the South Sudan crisis, their role is sort of being seen as a regional mediator.
But Smith says President Obama's visit sends the wrong message, citing Ethiopia's repressive regime.
What many people don't know is Ethiopia is the fourth most censored country in the world. They're the second largest jailer of journalists on the entire continent, second only to Eritrea, their next-door neighbor.
Atlantic Council's Bronwyn Bruton, who has met with Muslim Democratic activists in Ethiopia, some who were recently found guilty of terrorism, also calls President Obama's trip a mistake.
The fact that Ethiopia is getting a visit from President Obama in the wake of that guilty verdict and in the wake of sweeping the elections, taking 100% of the seats, sends a disastrous message to the Ethiopian government.
A senior Obama administration official tells VOA the U.S. regularly communicates its human rights concerns with the Ethiopian government, both in public and in private. The official says, quote, "We engage so we can urge and shape behavior in these areas." Aru Pandey, VOA News at the White House.
Now, the security of President Obama is a top priority during his stay in Kenya, and security forces will rely heavily on a system of closed-circuit cameras installed throughout Nairobi to protect the president. But as Mohammed Yusuf reports, in the past, the camera system has not worked as well as expected.
This is the crime scene where Parliament member George Mushai, his bodyguard and a driver were killed, shot down in the pre-dawn hours of February 7th. The attack happened in the city centre, not far from the government buildings protected by security forces and closed-circuit or CCTV cameras. The newly installed cameras were expected to help police identify the killers, and in fact, that nights were recorded by this camera on top of this 24-story building. But in the shadowy video obtained by VOA, it is impossible to make out distinct figures. Alois Lentimaga, Vice Chairman of the Parliament Security Committee, says CCTV failed to help solve the murders.
Investigation was thorough, very thorough. The other gadgets which are used to, especially the phone, some of those fellows were nabbed because of that. I don't think CCTV so much. Yeah, it's not so much of CCTV because CCTV is not fully operational.
Since then, the government installed more cameras, and security agencies will rely heavily on CCTV as part of security during President Obama's visit. Nairobi County Roads Executive Mohammed Abdullahi says previous problems are being addressed.
The feedback we expect from the ground into the control room is compromised when you have road infrastructure that are going on that affect our connectivity.
The cameras have cost the county government $4.4 million, an expenditure welcomed by police to fight crime and ease traffic congestion.
The cameras we are working on to put in place will be excellent in terms of performance. We do not want at any time for Kenyan citizens to feel that they have been shortchanged.
But many Kenyans say they are still waiting to see the system's value for the city. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Nairobi.
Now to Burundi, where votes are being counted and where pre-election violence caused thousands of people to flee the country in the past few months. Tuesday's controversial presidential ballot is believed to have had a low turnout. President Pierre Nkurunziza ran without significant opposition for a third term. The election has been roundly criticized as not free or fair after the government ignored an opposition boycott and calls from the international community to postpone the voting. A U.S. State Department spokesman dismissed the election.
There's no international observers. There's routine intimidation of voters. There's been a sustained effort to silence freedom of speech by media and by opposition members. So this is in no way, shape, or form can this be considered a free, fair, or credible election.
Government officials reported 2 policemen and an opposition official died in a night of gunfire and explosions before the election, but the capital was calm during Tuesday's voting hours. Witnesses say polling stations were much busier in the president's home village of Buye and in other pro-Nkurunziza parts of the country. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari says a regional joint task force to fight the militant group Boko Haram will be up and running by the end of this month. Mr. Buhari told VOA in an interview Tuesday that Nigeria will lead the task force and that troops from several of Nigeria's neighbors, including Chad, Niger, Benin, and Cameroon, could be deployed in operations against the terrorists. Mr. Buhari says there has been progress in the fight against Boko Haram, but he refused to predict imminent victory. The president is in the middle of a 4-day visit to Washington. He has met with President Obama, Secretary of State John Kerry, members of Congress, and Nigerians who live in the U.S. Mr. Obama praised the recent election in Nigeria, which led to the first democratic transfer of power since the end of military rule in 1999. Now, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, the UN warns that young women looking to join Islamic State militants are in for a rude awakening. Stay with us.
Health news and notes. This is Living Better.
Feeling better might be as simple as taking a walk in the woods. Researchers from Stanford University followed about 40 mentally healthy individuals, half of whom were told to take a 90-minute walk through the city. The others were told to take that walk through nature. Upon return, the subjects who walked through nature exhibited less of what brain scientists call rumination or brooding.
This type of thinking is highly associated with onset of depression. We looked at the parts of the brains that are active during rumination, and we noticed a decrease in the nature participants, but no change in the urban.
Stanford PhD student Gregory Bratman says he doesn't know how much time in natural environments is needed to reap mood-enhancing benefits, but a suggestion.
We need to start thinking about how we can integrate nature back into cities.
Half the world's population now lives in cities. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Welcome back. After the recent Islamic State-inspired attack in Tunisia that killed 38 people, 30 of them British, Britain is now debating how to tackle the terror group. Prime Minister David Cameron has announced new policies aimed at cracking down on propaganda and preventing nationals from traveling to join the group. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
A recent video from the self-styled Islamic State purportedly showing the execution of Syrian government soldiers. It is this type of propaganda that British Prime Minister David Cameron says must be tackled.
We're going to introduce new, narrowly targeted powers to enable us to deal with these facilitators and cult leaders and to stop them peddling their hatred.
Critics said Mr. Cameron is targeting the whole Muslim community.
He's come out with a strong us and them narrative, and he's trying to divide and separate. For all of his talk of unity, he doesn't want to debate, he wants to silence dissent.
But the policies were broadly welcomed by groups working to halt extremism. However, analysts question whether the new policies will tackle the primary narrative that drives ISIS recruitment.
The one thing that's missing from this whole approach to radicalization and extremism is the point that what radicalizes people more than anything else is this concept of success.
Ashraf says the capture by ISIS of swathes of Iraqi territory a year ago continues to feed that narrative, adding that this progress must be checked.
And really the primary way of doing that is through confronting them on the battlefield.
While the British government has begun to debate action against ISIS in Syria, it has ruled out troops on the ground.
But we are also clear that any action we take must not provide any succour to Assad or Assad's regime.
The West must not be afraid to prioritise, says Ashraf.
The Assad issue has to be a lower priority than Daesh. Until you get that, I'm afraid we are going to be looking forward to many more decades of this conflict spreading.
The United States is leading coalition airstrikes against ISIS militants. David Cameron wants to extend Britain's contribution to the mission beyond Iraq into Syria, but is seeking parliamentary consensus, something that could take months. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
The UN envoy fighting sexual violence in conflict is warning girls thinking of joining the self-proclaimed Islamic State militant group that it is a one-way ticket and the biggest mistake of their lives. In an interview with VOA's UN correspondent Margaret Bashir, Zainab Hawa Bangura spoke of meeting women and girls who have survived unspeakable abuses at the hands of Islamic State fighters.
ISIS recruiters use social media to recruit men and women. They urge them to reject their families and join their so-called caliphate across parts of Syria and Iraq. But many soon discover it is not the adventure they imagined.
ISIS is one-way tickets. You go there, you know you can't come out again.
Bangura says that's especially true for women and girls. She says even those who freely join ISIS are victims and need support, just like the ones who are abducted by the terror group. Recently, she visited refugee camps in Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan, meeting women who survived ISIS kidnappings and horrific sexual violence.
When I came back, I felt so heartbroken. I just wept myself to sleep.
The Yazidi community has been especially hard hit. A new UN report says as many as 3,500 Yazidis remain in Islamic State captivity, enduring physical and sexual abuse. Bangura says when the abductions began, many of the captured Yazidi women committed suicide.
I met a woman who actually was captured with 14 girls who actually mixed the poison and gave it to the 14 girls to commit suicide.
She says others hanged themselves with their headscarves or slit their wrists. Some were sold repeatedly, some traded for a pack of cigarettes. Many victims turn to their spiritual beliefs for comfort because Western-style psychological and social services are not widely available. Bangura says many of the younger girls just want to go back to school. She told them the best revenge against ISIS would be for them to succeed in life. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Indonesia sees the rise of the hijabster. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here is what is trending. Indonesia's young and trendy women have caught the attention of the fashion industry with their colorful and stylish hijabs. So much so that there is now a term for them, hijabsters. Indonesia has the world's largest Muslim population, and the number of women wearing the hijab has increased. Fashion blogs and magazines are increasingly catering to hijab-wearing ladies, with some fashionistas saying Indonesia has the potential to become a fashion mecca for Muslim women. Next up, Cuban entrepreneurs brace themselves for the revolution coming to the economy. Normalization of relations between Cuba and the United States will create a boom in tourism for the island. Alongside the normalization, Washington has opened up exports of telecommunications, agricultural and construction equipment, permitted more travel by Americans to Cuba, and opened banking relations. Cuban President Raul Castro has made it clear that Havana does not intend to abandon single-party rule or the state-controlled economy, but he has also given more autonomy to the state-run companies, slashed state payrolls and subsidies, and reduced the state's role in agriculture and retail in favor of a growing private sector. And finally, is the truth really out there? Russian billionaire Stephen Milner, physicist Stephen Hawking, and a team of scientists are about to embark on the biggest search yet for the alien life. Milner is pledging $100 million for the project called Breakthrough Listen. Milner is a physicist by training, made his fortune from savvy early investments in startups such as Facebook. Astronomers will listen to signals from the million star systems nearest to Earth and the 100 closest galaxies. And that is what is trending today. Lenore?
Thank you, Esther. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 300 and 600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
What is The Scoop? It's real talk, real issues, the real Africa. That's The Scoop with Salim Amin. Meet the latest game changers in Africa. Learn who inspires and leads. Entrepreneurs and trailblazers and people making a difference in Africans' lives. Monday through Friday on VOA. Find your time zone and get The Scoop.
Music is something that brings people together.
Music educates, it motivates, it's a bridge.
Music. Ali.
On
VOA.
I am Sheka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent.